Hello, Judge. If you are a lawyer or an American, I guess it doesn't get any bigger or better than this. Congratulations. In addition to honoring the wonderful state of Minnesota, and unless you correct me, I am going to assume that your purple attire is also meant to honor LSU in my state. And if I squint real hard, I might call it Marion blue, the colors of my Southern University in Louisiana. I want to compliment you and the Biden White House for selecting Senator Doug Jones to advise you. Senator Jones knows the Senate, and the Senate knows Senator Jones. And we know him to be quite the intellect, but more important, we know him to be a person of good judgment and goodwill. And I'm glad that you've been listening to him. I hope we will be able to use this hearing today to talk about, if not implicitly, at least implicitly, two subjects. The first is the legitimacy of the United States Supreme Court. Where does the court get its legitimacy? What can we do to enhance it? Judicial legitimacy is important. I don't need to tell you that. I'm rather fond of the Constitution. I know you are too. When members of the United States Supreme Court interpret it, I want the American people to believe them. I want the American people to say, well, I may not agree, but the men and women who made that decision are intellectually honest and people of good faith. One of the primary roles of the United States Supreme Court is to uphold the rule of law. And sometimes justices have to uphold the rule of law when it's not popular. Sometimes justices have to uphold the rule of law when it's not popular with the majority of Americans. Boy, that's tough. It's also important. Sometimes, not generally, but sometimes the majority can mean that just all the fools are on the same side. And that's what the court's there for. And I'm rather fond of the Bill of Rights, too, and I know you are as well. I've never believed that the Bill of Rights was there for the high school quarterback or the prom queen. They're covered by it. But the Bill of Rights is there to protect the rights of people who don't see the world exactly like everybody else, or who don't look exactly like everybody else. Now, unfortunately, through history, we have had people, some well-intentioned, who tried to delegitimize the Supreme Court. We had a president way back when who tried to impeach a Supreme Court justice. We had another president who wanted to pack the court. I remember the impeach Earl Warren signs during the Warren Court. And most of the people who want to delegitimize the Supreme Court believe that unlike our founders, in my judgment, believe that that members of the Supreme Court ought to be and are politicians in robes. They believe that the United States Supreme Court ought to be a mini Congress. They believe that the law is not the law. The law is supposed to just be politics practiced in a different way. and they believe in court packing, and they're wrong. Number two, I hope today that we can use this as an opportunity to talk about, if not explicitly, at least implicitly, that's what I'm going to try to do, the appropriate balance between representative government and declarative government. Now, in representative government, as you well know, people, through their elected representatives, make policy. In declarative government, policy is made by the unelected, the administrative state, and the federal judiciary. Now, both are important. Both are important. I'm not saying this is a zero-sum game or either or. But what's just as important is we have the appropriate balance between representative government and what I'll call declarative government. I mean, we have an administrative state. Did any of us ever think it would get this big? Is that healthy? We need to ask ourselves that. Is it really healthy to arrive at a circumstance where the administrative state passes 35 laws a year to our one? Is it really healthy to have an administrative state that makes its own laws, interprets its own laws, and enforces its own laws before courts, with respect to which the administrative state appoints the judges? I think that's a fair question to ask. In terms of, with respect to declarative government in the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary, federal judges have enormous power. They have to, but they do. They have enormous power. You're appointed for life. You can't be unelected. Your salary can't even be reduced. And you have to have that power. Judicial power is important. So is judicial restraint. I believe that the appropriate role of the federal judiciary is the following. Federal judges don't make law. They don't tell us what the law ought to be. They tell us what the law is. Now, I said primarily because, of course, sometimes federal judges make law. I mean, you make the law of the case. You decide a case. You have to tell us what reasonable means in terms of searches and seizures. You have to help us define restraint of trade after we pass a statute. So, of course, judges make law. But I'm talking about the proper balance. I'll leave you with these last thoughts, and then I'll yield back my time. I want you to hear the words of one of, in my opinion, is one of our most distinguished Supreme Court justices. I'm going to read his words. The American people love democracy, and the American people are not fools. The people know their value judgments are quite as good as those taught in any law school, maybe better. Value judgments, after all, should be voted on, not dictated. I look forward, Judge, to getting to know you better. And congratulations, Mom and Dad.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Jackson, welcome back to the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Administrator, good morning.
Good morning.
With respect to the Green New Deal climate change portion of the President's infrastructure bill, how much is it going to lower world temperatures?
Well, I think there's a focus on the American Jobs Plan and the President's climate goals.
Yes, sir, but how much is it going to lower world temperatures? That's the purpose of it.
I think when we look at the climate summit and the target that the President will announce along with the rest of the world, we'll see comprehensively what collectively all of the world
Have you done
actors
any
can do.
modeling? I'm just trying to understand. You're asking us to appropriate $2.3 trillion and to tax corporations $1.7 trillion, at least 50% of which will fall on the backs of workers, because when you tax something, you get less of it. And a big purpose of the infrastructure bill is to lower world temperatures. I mean, that's what global warming, climate change is. So my question is simple. What does your modeling show? How much will this lower world temperatures?
I think the science shows that we collectively have to pursue a target to lower.
I understand the
climate
target,
mitigation.
but what I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
I understand the target. The target is 1 degree centigrade. I get that part. How much will this bill lower world temperatures?
I think the answer to that is dependent upon, in concert with how much this bill plus other actions outside of the bill look at in concert with reducing those targets while creating jobs.
Have you done any modeling?
Yes, we've done.
What do your models show in terms of how much this bill will lower world temperatures or slow the progression of CO2 emissions?
I don't think the modeling speaks specifically to what this bill in isolation will do. I think the modeling shows the targets that we have to look forward to. And so, in addition to this bill, for instance, there are statutory authorities and other powers.
But
Congress have
why are we doing this if we don't understand, haven't done modeling to show how much it's going to lower world temperature or lower the progression of CO2 emissions and methane?
I think, Senator, we're doing this because the jobs plan proves that we're doing more than just focusing on climate, that we're positioning ourselves to be global leaders on technology.
I
and
get
job
all
creation
that,
as
Mr.
well.
Administrator. I'm not trying to just pick on you, but
Sure.
this is what Deputy Foreign Minister Li Zhongqing said last week of China on April 16th. Quote, "Some countries are asking China to do more on climate change. I'm afraid this is not realistic." So China produces about a third of the world's, really about 28% to be fair, of the world's CO2, okay? They're not going to participate. And we're going to spend $2.3 trillion. A lot of it is climate change. Surely you can give us an estimate of how much it's going to slow the progression of CO2 and how much it's going to lower world temperature.
Well, I'm not quite sure I take the statement at face value from the Chinese representative.
Well, maybe he's a liar, but let's put that aside.
China's investing a lot of money in renewable energy and battery storage and being globally competitive in the very areas that this job bill
I understand.
highlights.
You don't have a figure, do you, Mr. Administrator?
A figure of,
How much this is going to lower world temperature or reduce the progression of CO2 in the United States?
I don't have a figure in front of me that
You don't have it, do you?
specifies how much in isolation this bill lowers the world temperature based on just U.S. participation.
Right. So we're just going to spend $2.3 trillion and find out
I
on
think
a wing and a prayer?
I think the American Jobs Plan looks at more than just a prayer and a whim. I think it looks at some really good metrics that shows
Right.
that we can create.
Excuse me
millions
for
of
interrupting,
jobs.
but I'm about to run out of time. Let me ask. Let me ask let me ask my former colleague, the state treasurer, our new commerce secretary, to build credibility with the Congress, the taxpayers, and his own credibility, as a first step to paying for this $2.3 trillion bill. Why wouldn't President Biden turn to the Congress and say, I want you to take a look at the discretionary spending in your budget and scrub it?
I don't think it's an either or. The president is calling for a historic investment in infrastructure, as you say, $2 trillion. He believes that that's what's necessary. And
What budget
that's-
reductions is he recommending?
We're all going through our budgets every day and looking for ways that we can be more efficient. But the truth of it is, we need an investment.
Yes, ma'am. How much money do you think you're going to reduce your budget?
Say it again.
How much money do you think you're going to reduce your budget?
I don't have a great answer to that at the moment, but I can promise you it's not enough. We're not going to save our way out of decades of underinvestment in R&D and in infrastructure. Yes, we need to run an efficient, effective government, and the president's clear with us about that. We also need to invest to grow and to compete and to regain our competitive advantage.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.